Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Most brush it off or blame themselves, saying things like, I've lost my mojo. Or people make excuses. I've had a long day at work. Sorry, honey. I'm just not feeling it. Look, with Roman, it is easy to talk about with a real healthcare professional who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you for free with 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward, simple, and discreet. Getting started is simple. Just go to getroman.com/Chael and complete an online visit. Go to getroman.com/Chael today. If approved, you'll get $15 off your first order of ED treatment. Guys, I was just in a dust-up. I got in a dust-up with Helwani, who gets under my skin in these type situations. Doing Errol the Bad Guy over on ESPN+. Please go check that out. Okay? I reference that show a lot with the expectation that you will check that out so you're part of the narrative and we can all move along together. Here, and this is what Errol always does, Errol changes the argument mid-argument. Okay? A statement will be made. We both bite into that like a dog on a bone. I start to beat him, and then he changes the argument. And here's what he did, and here's what we were discussing. Errol was talking about how important it is to have Jon Jones and Ngannou to figure this out. And Errol was very open that Jon has done everything wrong, but that this fight still needs to be figured out. And Dana's reluctance to do it, by example, was wrong, and we've got clearer heads must prevail. Something along these lines. I said, Errol, excuse me. You're sitting here telling me what a big night of business that would be, and I'm pushing back. I'm pushing back in this regard. Jon Jones has had 6 months of promotion. Okay, as we sit here right now, what's the bigger fight, Jones versus Ngannou or Lewis versus Ngannou? The answer is, right, you would come to that, you think about it for a minute, you kind of go back and forth, but you would come to the conclusion of Jon versus Francis. And the mere fact that you had to think about it and weigh on it, even if you came to this conclusion, stresses what I'm trying to point out, which is they're both big fights, and there is not a huge meaningful difference. The difference as of right now is Jon Jones has had 6 months of promotion for this fight, not to mention the single best promotion that you can get, which is speculative. Is Jon going to the class? Will Jon immediately fight for a title? Will that be against Stipe or Francis? 6 months of buildup. Derek Lewis has had none. And they're still relatively close. And I was just bringing that to Errol's attention. Because if you try to make the suckers play, and I'm going to lose respect for you if you do, if you try to make the suckers play that that's the bigger fight and therefore you have to do it, you're stuck at 1. Or you could do it another way and be guaranteed 3. Be guaranteed Lewis. Be guaranteed Jones. Be guaranteed Stipe. And nobody with a straight face can tell me that those 3 fights are bigger than this one. Not even close. So there's a couple of ways that you have to look at it. Moreover, when did we get to the day of the big fight? This has been resisted by the fans, the contestants, and the pundits from day one. No, it should not be the bigger fight. It should be you're standing on merit and merit alone. And anytime we get away from that, where's the Ali Act? I mean, all this ridiculousness, but now we're supposed to say that that's the bigger fight and therefore we should do it. So Errol said to me, he said these exact words. He said, Chael, I don't know how you consider with a straight face. It's the most ridiculous thing that you've ever said. Well, time out, because that's where he changed the argument. Time out. I want to see Jones and Ngannou. I got that whole thing. What I'm speaking to is where Errol was attempting to say that that's not what Dana wanted to do. Okay, Dana got asked one question. It was by John Morgan. One question at the press conference. Would you do Jones and Ngannou? And you know what Dana said? Yes. So this entire idea that Dana White is trying to take something from Jon Jones, Dana was asked one time, would you do the fight? And without hesitation, Dana said yes. Dana added to the idea, I don't know that Jon wants to do that fight. You asked me if I want to do the fight. Yes, I would do the fight. I don't know that Jon wants to do it. And it sounds as though he's trying to price himself out of it right now. Laid out. That was it. Dana has not said anything else. Nothing. Hasn't been asked, hasn't had an opportunity, hasn't been in front of the media. And it's very important that you know that, because there is now a dialogue going around, and it's very small, but I felt like it was being perpetuated by my own partner, Errol Hawani, that Dana is somehow stopping this fight. Dana said he wanted the fight. One word, yes. Have Jon call Hunter Campbell. If we hear it from Jon, we'll get the paperwork. This fight's off to the races. I don't think it's going to happen. Turned out Dana was right. Dana said this Saturday night. It is now Thursday. Jon has tweeted publicly that he had the call with Hunter Campbell and that he stopped Hunter in his tracks and said $10 million doesn't even get us talking. Which is what Dana predicted would happen. That he would price himself or negotiate out of doing the fight. And that is where I come to you with the argument that this is the first time ever that the big money fight is one that people are trying to go for in place of the competitive fight. To make believe that Jon in a division he's never been in is somehow in front of Derek Lewis, in a division he's done everything in, including beating the sitting and reigning champion, it's a stretch. It's a really tough stretch. There's an argument. Jon, having been as close to undefeated and dominant as he has been for a period of time, there's a very good argument. And you're hearing this from a guy who changed weight classes and on day one got a world title fight. This isn't coming with some level of hypocrisy. I understand that there's a good argument there. I'm just forcing the media to take a look at themselves. That never before have they been about the big fight. They have been about the right fight. Right fight is obviously Lewis. And the only one that could argue with Lewis is Stipe himself. And then you have Jon. But I've conceded from the jump, we have three. Jon, Lewis, and Stipe. What we're arguing about now is the order. And we as the audience needs to do a couple of things. But they need to be in this order. We need to get Francis booked. The only one unhappy with Francis being put on ice and put into a number one contendership and having to wait to see the winner of Stipe versus Cormier, let a recovery time and a new training camp and a new media tour go through. The only one unhappy with that was Francis. And all Francis has said coming out of this fight is, I want to fight. I want to be busy. So the number of opponents, somebody else figures that out. I have one request. Get me scheduled. That is the kind of attitude that we celebrate, but it's also one that gets rewarded. So we can't play this game too long. And whoever gets to go first doesn't mean the other guy doesn't get to go second. But the fear is obvious. The fear is that the bigger drawing fight is Jon and Francis, and that Lewis will come out and beat Francis again. That's the fear. So now it's Jones versus Lewis, which is that big fight. Different fight, though, right? It's a different fight. If you're looking for a one-off, anyway, you want a one-off, a one-time, deal with all the hassles and headaches and that's tomorrow's problem. If that's the way you want to think, yeah, you could come right back to Jones and Ngannou. Sure you could. But how bad do these guys want to compete? I mean, Francis didn't go too far with this, but Francis did weigh in. Yeah, that's a bigger fight, and I want paid differently for that. Now, what Francis doesn't know, because he's never been champion, is he's going to get brought into the office, and he's going to get presented with a new contract that's going to have a championship clause. Francis is going to be happy as a pig in dirt. Don't worry about Francis. I'm just sharing with you that kind of an attitude. Francis, put that under your hat. Put that under your cap. You've done a whole lot of fights, and you were nothing but a loss. Not for nothing, but you have. They all have. So now if it's time to give one back, man, go give it back. Now, that's not the situation. Francis has got some good news coming. Wait until he gets that. I'm just sharing with you. Don't start that. If you're the baddest man on the planet, if you're getting called the MMA's Mike Tyson, if you're the biggest guy in the division that barely makes the weight limit, you've got an advantage, a meaningful advantage going in, and we're all as the audience going to act as though it isn't true, right? There aren't a whole lot of guys that can whip my ass. There's nobody I outweigh by 30 pounds that can whip my ass. A training young stud at right now, I got 30 pounds. I mean, I'm just saying, not for nothing, but if Francis wants us to continue on the myth that he's the best fighter because of skill, and we're not going to take into account that he has a 30-pound weight advantage over the average opponent, happy to do so. But Francis, if you back down publicly from a 205-pounder, a 205-pounder who ran away from his division because he was scared by a 185-pounder, I mean, do you see the problem? Don't do that. Don't do that. Wait till you meet with Dana. You're gonna like what happens becoming champion. But don't come out publicly and be scared or start negotiating for, come on, man.